Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is John Hope Bryant. John is recognized as one of Time Magazine's 50 for the Future Leaders. He's an entrepreneur, author, and advisor, and one of the nation's most recognized empowerment leaders. He is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Operation Hope and Bryant Group Companies. He is the author of Love Leadership and is the only African-American best-selling business author. He served as chairman of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability, Subcommittee on the Underserved and Community Empowerment, and he was appointed by President Obama in 2014 as a member of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability for Young Americans. He is also the co-founder of the Gallup-HOPE Index, the only national research poll on youth financial dignity and youth economic energy in the United States. He is also the author of a new book called How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, Rebuilding the Path to the Middle Class. This is a fascinating book, one we're going to discuss today, and I am so honored to have with me John Hope Bryant. Welcome, John.
My deep honor. Thanks for your care and your interest.
You know, I touched on a bit of your very impressive background in my introduction. Now, you were raised in a stable home with two loving parents. Your dad was a business owner. So please tell me how you came to do what you do today.
Well, I mean, it's all role modeling. As you just mentioned, my father owned his own business for 54 years. My mother told me she loved me every day of my life, and I was lucky enough to believe it. And when I was 9 years old, a banker came in my classroom in Compton, California, and taught a course in financial literacy and home economics, a course which doesn't exist anymore. And the banker happened to have on a red tie and a white shirt and a blue suit. It happened to be Caucasian, but it didn't matter what race he was. As far as I was concerned, he was the color of green, as in U.S. currency. And I remember asking the banker, what do you do for a living? And how do you get rich legally? And the banker, after he left, told me that he financed entrepreneurs. And I just said, I don't know what an entrepreneur is, but I want to be one. And it just changed my life. And I started my first business the next year, the neighborhood candy house, and put the liquor store out of the candy business when I was 10 years old. And that kicked off the endorphins on the right side of my brain. And that was it for the next 10 years. I was starting something, and most of them failed, but it didn't matter. Because while the business might have been failing, I was succeeding as a person. My economic energy was getting organized. My optimism was being improved. My sense of resiliency was growing. I was taking no for vitamins. I mean, I was succeeding. And internally, building my sense of wealth. And, of course, I define poverty differently in this book.
How do you define poverty in the book?
Half of poverty is just low self-esteem. It's just like a lack of belief in yourself. As I keep saying, and I'm trying to say this enough so that it just really pounds in people's consciousness, if you don't know who you are at 9 in the morning, by midnight the same day, somebody's going to tell you who you are. If you don't have confidence in yourself in this world will just eat you alive. I mean, you will not succeed. You can't get out of your bed sometimes and get out the front door without being battered by the world, without belief in yourself. You can't do this radio program, and Barbara can't produce it without fundamental confidence in yourself. And so that low self-esteem, most prevalent in African-American and Native American populations because of their experience in this country over generations, by the way, because everything is about role modeling and at some point becomes embedded DNA as a result of experiences. And success builds on success, and so does failure build on failure. And becomes a culture. Things that we can get over, by the way, but things that are embedded realities. Half of poverty, low self-esteem. Then you got the second part, which is role modeling and environment. Why do kids want to be rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers in inner cities? Because that's what they see. Mm-hmm. nobody should be surprised that a kid grows up wanting to be a rap star, an athlete, or a drug dealer in an urban neighborhood, because those are the only aspirational symbols of success that they see. And everybody's aspirational. And then the last part of poverty is aspiration and opportunity. Let me go back to the second part about the role modeling is environment. So basically, the visual there is if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. Mm-hmm. So that then leads to aspiration, code word for hope. The most dangerous person in the world is the person with no hope. And that then leads to opportunity. If you don't see opportunity in your life, you stop aspiring and striving before you even start. Think about kids dropping out of high school at a 30 to 70% rate. They're basically saying, you're not connecting education with aspiration, so why bother?
You know, you kind of glossed over that sentence, but I found that incredibly powerful. You said that the most dangerous person in the world is a person without hope. And I was particularly mulling that over as I was listening to the news about what's happening, in the Gaza Strip, in the Middle East, what's happening in the Ukraine, and what's happening in inner cities. When you lose hope, you actually have nothing to lose. And so I guess you just will do whatever it takes to restore that sense of hope and self-esteem.
Well, that's precisely why we've launched Project 5117, city by city. That's why we're putting in place our own ecosystem, establishing the first ever private banker for the working poor, the struggling class, and the teetering middle class who make $50,000 a year or less. Basically, half the population is making $50,000 a year or less in this country of all races, and they've got too much money into their money, and they are getting depressed, losing hope, losing faith, and we're losing role models. And then, of course, the negative role models are taking over. So we're going to put 2,000 Hope Biz in the Box academies in public schools, and spike what I hope will be 1 million startup entrepreneurs by 2020. That's what, if you want to solve America's problems, you need 1 million startups a year. That just solves everything, because all job growth comes from startups, shoot-outs, entrepreneurs, and small businesses in year 3 through year 7.
Now, your book is really focused on the American model of capitalism. It's very different from some of the models that you actually mention in the book, like the Grameen Bank and microfinance. You actually want people to work within the capitalist system and make it work for them. And them actually is, as you keep on pointing out, it's the 90%.
Yeah. Well, them is us.
Yeah.
I mean. Well, first of all, I think what Muhammad Yunus has done at the Grameen Bank is nothing short of extraordinary, and he's made an incredible impact on the world. And I think where there is no banking system at all, putting together and putting in place a micro credit and microfinance system for the least of these God's children is God's work. But we don't have that problem in America and in France. I mean, there's a banking system in every developed country. There is a banking system. It's just that people don't have any ready access to it, and it's not serving them. It's serving a very small, increasingly, it's very small elite. What's that joke? I'll lend you money when you prove you don't need it. And banking is the only industry that's not been commoditized in 2,500 years of modern mankind history. It's since the time of Jesus. Every other industry has been commoditized. I go through them in the book, how the book considers capitalism in great detail. I talk about the automobile industry. It was a toy for the wealthy. Not a toy, it was a privilege for the wealthy. The automobile, the restaurants, even indoor plumbing, toilets. I mean, refrigerators, microwaves, cell phones. All these things were created for the privilege, but you can't create a market economy based on the privilege. So it was when the least of these God's children, you and me, got a hold of these things that they became sustainable. I mean, look, the largest retailer in the world is not even Marcus, is Walmart. And the second runner-up is Target. I mean, in the stores that the well-to-do go to are way down the line in economic vitality and growth. So you and me are driving this economy, but we get little credit for it. And oftentimes, because we never got the memo on how free enterprise and capitalism works, we have no idea how to participate in it, and then we assume that the system is rigged against us and must be designed for crooks and the always rich, because no matter how hard we work, we can't seem to get ahead. And there's a reason for that. And by the way, when you can't figure that out, you become poor too. You lose hope. You start feeling like your children won't do as good as you have, and you start panicking, and you start aching in your bones that you're working so hard and don't seem to be getting ahead. And again, you got too much money at the end of your money, and life becomes about the grind versus about the dream. But when you never got the memo, when no one ever taught you about free enterprise and capitalism, not for 3 months you didn't get the memo, 149 years, then life begins to make sense, and you stop feeling that you're a failure, there's something wrong with you, or you're stupid, or worse, the system is gaming you.
You talk about a community whose culture was hijacked by thugs and the thug culture. It's funny, I was just watching a program on OPB last night about the years of Al Capone at the years of the 20s and 30s. And there was also this drug culture, and there was also economic disaster looming. It seems like history is kind of replaying itself. So what did we do to get ourselves out of the Depression in the 30s that then was forgotten? And what you're doing kind of has a bit of that feel to me.
You know, you're the first person since the book came out to ask such a really thoughtful and I think visionary question. It's the right question, because it's exactly where we were right before and right after the Great Depression. And of course, the Big Bang that we did resulted in the Marshall Plan in 1947, where we rebuilt the nations that had bombed us, Germany and Japan, which seemed highly illogical at the time. But it was a visionary move by our political leadership. And it was selfish, too. It was in our enlightened self-interest. They knew that you could not have a peaceful world. They knew you could not have a global economy with France and Europe by extension, and Japan and Asia by extension on its knees. That these people were not the problem. Their leadership was the problem. And to punish the entire nation would be winning a battle and losing a war, which is, by the way, what we're doing these days politically. Is we're not only winning the battle, we're losing the war. We're winning the battles, and it was reversed now. They didn't want to win the battle and lose the war. We seem to want these days to win the battle and lose the war. That's what the current set of leadership is increasingly trending toward, but I am convinced we can turn it around. What we did back then was we focused on our aspirations. We focused on creating jobs. We focused on resetting the banking industry so it could serve small business, small shop holders back in that appeared the agrarian age. But this is talking about Germany and Japan and the Marshall Plan to finish that line of thought. Who's our largest trading partners today? Germany and Japan. What's two of the largest economies in the world today? Germany and Japan. Who are two political allies? Germany and Japan. And America became a global economic power, and we created a global economic system after World War II, after the Marshall Plan. It was a soft power that informed and reinforced the hard power. It wasn't the war, it was winning the peace. And creating a middle class that was so transformative. And then you had political leadership that was bold enough to think outside the box. I mean, where did retirement come from? We take retirement as a demigod these days, a little g. But retirement, and many people say, at 65, I'm done, I have no value. But retirement was a political answer by the president after the Great Depression to get 18-year-olds back to work by letting 65-year-olds, then 60-year-olds, quote, retire. And it was a European concept. He sort of sent his emissaries around the world to find solutions to employment. And they came back and said, well, they got this thing in Europe called retirement, and they let people, stop working at a certain time. Where before that we worked till 80 years old until you dropped. Mm-hmm. So the job creation in the short term, this is government's job, is to spur, encourage, and create the enabling environment. The job creation initially came from 18-year-olds who were able to work because 60-year-olds stopped working and were able to enjoy some of the years of their life. We've now taken retirement as some definition of our value in the workforce and society is over. I just think that's dead wrong. I think you should rewire, not retire. We sort of lost our storyline, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You talk about the WPA, the infrastructure that was created as part of that job building program here in this country is now all crumbling. And maybe it's time for an investment in rebuilding our own infrastructure. In fact, I think you point to that in your book.
Yes. But with all of this, making it very clear, just so your audience is clear on where I'm coming from, I'm not talking about socialism. I'm not talking about communism. I'm talking about capitalism. And I'm saying that the government can create an enabling environment for the expansion and the broadening of what I might call open source capitalism, so that the least of these God's children can benefit from the free enterprise system. And most wealth in this country came from the poor, and I've documented that in the book, and the working person, or oddly enough, through government. When we go to war, people need to think about where those products came from. Where did the Jeeps come from? Where did the trucks come from? Where did the tanks come from? Where did the planes come from? That's Boeing. That's Ford. Those are contracts let to private enterprise by government to facilitate the delivery of the mechanisms of war, as an example. But almost, everything we see ultimately comes from the free enterprise system, the private sector. 92% of all jobs in the day in America are private sector. 8% of jobs are government. And so it's not one or the other. We need government to provide, as you said, safe streets, infrastructure. New York City, supposedly the beacon of self-reliance and free enterprise, wouldn't work without a subway system, wouldn't work without safe streets. But that's a public investment. So, yes, I'm calling for a resurgence, a renewal. But I'm also saying for the first time that the tail has to now wag the dog. That for the first time ever, we've never tried to use free enterprise and capitalism at scale to eradicate poverty and to set people free. I think the new freedom is self-determination. So I'm saying the government plays a supporting role, whereas the government in the past has played a lead role.
You focus a lot on reviving, exciting, and listing the entrepreneurial spirit of today's youth. You even talk about the criminal culture as being one example of entrepreneurial spirit that I found rather amusing. That if we could kind of harness that impulse, that energy into positive directions, we would have a really good chance in reviving the economies of these cities. Tell us what you are doing to encourage this.
Yeah, so let me go one step further than what you articulated. I'm not suggesting that we should encourage, obviously, you're not saying this, but I'm just to be clear, I'm not suggesting we encourage things like drug dealing and all that kind of stuff, nor am I saying that these are some oddball occurrences. I'm saying that the folks that we call entrepreneurs in mainstream, mature, reasonable societies, upper middle class neighborhoods, is the drug dealer in a poor neighborhood. That God did not give intelligence unevenly. He didn't just give intelligence to wealthy, white, Asian, whatever, upper income people, and then told all black, brown, supposedly poor, and by the way, there's more poor whites in America than poor anybody else, anybody who thinks it's a racial issue. But the vision of people is that poverty is somehow black and brown and urban, blah, 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 blah. But God gave intelligence equally. You just have, in these low-wealth environments, no positive aspirational role models for success. So again, if all you see in your neighborhood are rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers, with everybody wanting to be aspirational, why is anybody surprised? The kids grew up wanting to be rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers. Now my wife tells me that girls are wanting to be what is it, Janae? It's not prostitutes. It's in clubs. These dancers in the club, strippers. They want to be strippers. This just blows me away. But this is what irrationality does to you when that's the only symbol of aspiration and success you see in your neighborhood. Now, a drug dealer may be unethical, immoral. There may be a special place in hell reserved for somebody who sells death to their own community, man. But one thing they're not is dumb. Mm-hmm. They understand import, export, finance, marketing, wholesale, retail, customer service, security, territory. These are not dumb people. They're misdirected people. So what we're going to do is take that natural entrepreneurial talent and organize it, give them, put them in these 2,000 Hope Business Box Academies in public schools. Ultimately, want to go into the penal system as well. Get a kid a course in financial literacy. Make sure they're outside role models. Teaching these courses now so they can role model outside success with a suit on. Course in financial literacy, course in entrepreneurship. 25 businesses you can start for $500 or less.
Well, John, you're actually going a little quickly past some of these initiatives, which I found quite fascinating. Can we just spend a moment and talk about the financial literacy courses that you're envisioning?
I'm not used to media people telling me that I'm going too quickly. I need to spend a moment. They normally is saying, "Can you please talk a little faster?" So I'm pleased to slow down. God bless your program.
So, financial literacy, what are you doing to inculcate that in the young people?
Well, I think that this is the language of money. I mean, this is no different than you can't go to Japan and speak Russian and do very well. You can't go to Mexico and speak Portuguese. Maybe some people will understand you, but most people won't. So you've got a whole generations of people who've grown up in America, a capitalist country, who don't speak the free enterprise and capitalist language. Financial literacy is the global language of money. And when you don't understand the language of money and you don't have a bank account, you're an economic slave. So the first thing we've got to do is teach them the language of money. Now, if you want to put a kid to sleep, you give them a traditional financial literacy course. So we're not going to talk to them about 401k programs and the retirement programs and an IRA account. I mean, it's so boring. We're going to connect it to their aspirations, which is what I was talking about the Hope Business Box Academies and the startup grants and the pitch events. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Let's now tie your financial literacy into that dream and connect education with aspiration, and then all the lights come on. So we're going to give them a language in not just money, but connect that to their road to their desired success. We're going to basically reintroduce them to their own God-given potential. Everybody is born with the potential to succeed. Everybody's born basically perfect, but we learned words. Now, this is deep now, and we learned words like can't, impossible. We learn negativity. We learn to be cynical, but we're born optimistic. We learn that hope supposedly is for the naive. That's what we learn. We want to unlearn those things, and we also have learned what we're against. We become expert in what we're against, and we need to re-inject that with helping people understand once again what they're for, so that they can then operationalize that in their life. And that starts with a course in financial literacy. This should be required, K through 12, for every kid in America. We live in a free enterprise system. We're not teaching anybody the free enterprise system. We're just winging it. This is just crazy. Mm-hmm.
Now, you also point out that particularly in poor neighborhoods where the people with a credit score of 500 do not have access to bank accounts, to credit cards. They're then at the mercy of the payday lenders and really modern day loan sharks.
It's slavery.
It is economic slavery. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
this is modern day slavery because
tell us what you're doing on that score.
Yeah, and again, this is not racism. It's not based on race. It's not even active discrimination. I mean, nobody's waking up in the morning and saying, "Ooh, let me, conspire to make you miserable." What people are, bad capitalists are waking up and saying, you don't get it. Actually, you do get it. You get that you have a 500 credit score. You don't get your 500 credit score, but you get that at a 500 credit score, there are certain things that are attractive to you. You got low self-esteem and low levels of financial IQ and low levels of financial engagement and low levels of options. And so I've got high levels of abuse coming your way. So you've got these check cashers next to payday loan lenders, next to rent-to-own stores, next to title lenders, next to liquor stores that are basically target marketing. They're targeting a 500 credit score customer. And what I'm going to do with Hope Inside Network, the private banker for the working poor, the struggling class, and the teetering middle class, 1,000 locations we're putting in across this country, we're going to rob them of their customer by moving credit scores 120 points over 24 months. And nothing changes your life more than God or love than moving your credit score 120 points.
How did you find these partners? You actually got several banks to partner with you.
Yeah, we've gotten 80 location commitments, almost 100. The 20 additional commitments aren't done yet, so I don't want to count them yet, but we got close to 100 commitments, 80 confirmed in the last 250 days, so it's not a pipe dream. SunTrust Bank started it off, then PNC Bank and Regions Bank and Popular Community Bank and Bank of the West was one of our original profile partners, and Union Bank and Microsoft and Accenture, and all these name brand companies have signed on because it's doing good and doing well, but creating sustainable customers too. Marion, if we raise credit scores to 700, we're creating a new sustainable customer for a mainstream institution. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where everybody wins. Everybody wins when that happens. And Marion, the local mayor, gets a tax base because people with a 700 credit score, well, that liquor store is going to turn into a convenience store in 5 years. That check casher is going to turn into a credit union in the bank. That bank's going to then start making loans for home ownership because people with a higher credit score want to own something. And half of employers require a credit check, which makes it so now you can actually go get a job. Now you got a job. You're going to own something. You're going to pay taxes. You're going to pay property taxes. You're going to pay sales tax, and you're going to contribute to payroll tax. That's what drives infrastructure investment in a city. That then mayor then has dollars for schools, for police, for roads and gutters. I mean, boom! That poor neighborhood now became an emerging market. See, it really ain't that complicated.
Mm-hmm. You said that we don't so much have an economic crisis in America, but rather a crisis of virtues and values. Can you expand on that?
Yes, that we're not human doings, we're human beings. Deepak Chopra, the great author, said we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But life's all about energy, and it's all about leadership. I'll give you two quick examples. One is a pretty radical example. We have been thinking about solving poverty numerically, and so what we do, we go build new schools, and we give people new housing, and and then we find that 4, 5, 8 years later, it's all tore up, and things aren't any better because people aren't things. You give me the most tore up school, the most toe up house on the most toe up block. And I didn't say tore, I said intentionally toe, as they say in my neighborhood, toe up. And give me a great crack leadership team. Let me pick my leadership team, and I'll just clean everybody's clock. My kids will be graduating from that school. We will revitalize those homes. We will create a block club. We will become our own community police. because it's a stakeholder's mentality. Nobody washes a rental car. If you don't own it, you're not going to take care of it. But it all starts with people. Even on Wall Street, people are investing in companies, but they're really buying management teams. It's the management team that's leading the asset that's most valuable. So we're looking for love in all the wrong places, is what I'm saying. It is a crisis of virtues and values, but we're identifying with the wrong metrics. If I give a homeless guy $1 million, Miriam, he'll be broke in 6 months. But that's what philanthropy has meant for the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I was really struck in reading your book about the parallels between the kind of sickness of our society. And something I interviewed a Dr. Tiansheng Su last year. He wrote a book called The Secret to Healing Cancer. And he said that he is convinced that hopelessness about the future is the real cause of cancer. That when you need to trust your body and have self-confidence and belief in the value of your existence in order to heal yourself if you come down with it or to avoid it. And when you think of that parallel in our society, we really do have this cancer of poverty. And I just thought that you were so spot on when you said that the fundamental problem was hopelessness. So
yes, and I agree with that. I agree with that premise 100%. Somebody once said, and I think this is dead on: disease is dis-ease. Now, are there carve-outs to this? Of course there are. If you grew up in an agrarian environment where pesticides were sprayed for 40 years on all of the plants and in the soil, and then that the pesticides in the plant and that soil embedded, and that those fruits and vegetables came into your house, and you ate that for 30 years growing up, 20 years growing up, could you get cancer that way? Yes, you can. But most, again, we're 70% water, we're all energy. I think most disease is dis-ease, is exactly what the doctor said. I haven't been, I'm sure that something will happen to me at some point, because that's life. But Mary, I haven't been sick in 23 years. I've been running Operation Hope for 23 years, and I haven't been sick. And my chief of staff jokes that God knew I couldn't afford to get sick because I got to meet payroll every 2 weeks. but you know, I just, my attitude and my optimism. I should be exhausted right now. I'm doing a city a day. I'm doing interviews. I'm doing speeches. I'm still running Operation Hope. I'm on planes. I'm in cars. I'm in different environments. I'm in different hotels. And I just get energized by these conversations. I get energized by the work we're doing. I get energized by having a client come to me and saying that they're a member of the 700 credit score club. I get energized by a young person, 23 years old, walking up to me and giving me a business card and saying, I'm a young entrepreneur. You've inspired me to take my life back. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer without energy. And by the way, if any of your listeners is experiencing being tired, this is a great example. Just go get a new job. Either you're tired, you got the wrong husband, the wrong wife, the wrong job, the wrong career. Because when you're doing what you're passionate about, you may be worn out. You may be exhausted. You may cannot type one more word before you get re-energized, but you'll never be tired.
Mm. You remind me of this comment that you made that no society can achieve sustainable success by focusing only on what it's against. You're encouraging people, and incidentally, I think our politicians and pundits didn't quite get that memo. What should we be for? What is the kind of vision that you're holding that energizes you every day?
The thing that energizes me, well, let me back up and say that I think the reason that our so-called leaders do that is that they don't know what the answer really is, and they're faking it. The Bible says that where there is no vision, the people perish. Dr. King was different from most civil rights leaders because he was an optimist. He was an expert in what he was for, not what he was against. He was the only black leader of that time talking to white America. Everybody else was black leaders talking to black America. He was not one of the leaders fanning flames of fear. He was providing a vision for hope, providing leadership for the future. What did he say to all of America? I'm here to save black men's bodies and white men's souls. That the movement was about redeeming the soul of America from the triple evils of war, racism, and poverty. He was speaking, he was enrolling us in a larger vision, a vision that exceeded his grasp, bold, audacious, that spoke to our human energy and our optimism that we were born with and our potential to change the world. I mean, all of us, I'm not trying to get spiritual here, basically all of us are God's children. Now, think about that. If you're God's child, then technically you have the capacity with enough self-definition and discipline to become like Jesus. Now, none of us will get there because we're highly imperfect. We don't have the ability to suffer like Jesus. But you can become Jesus adjacent. and maybe that's Nelson Mandela. Maybe that's Gandhi. Maybe that's Mother Teresa. Maybe that's what we're seeing in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We get these prophets, Marilyn to Rosa Parks, Mary Wright Edelman in today's day and age, Dr. Dorothy Height, who come along, and reimagine everything. Now, we really have had very few of those prophets in the business sector. But I think that's the next iteration, is we've got to have some disciples out here who believe you can do well and do good, do well by doing good, that you can actually save that you can actually save the environment and the ecosystem for a new generation or two or three or four, and still make a few bucks. That actually you can actually make a few bucks saving the environment. That there will be businesses and industries that get created out of nothing more than an idea tied to environmental sustainability. There's this perception that if you do one, you can't do the other. That the only way you get paid is by raping and pillaging people. That's just stupid. Or people who just don't know how to make any money and don't know where jobs come from just start saying stupid things, and the things that they are most comfortable with fuel your insecurity and your pain because you're depressed and you want somebody to basically give you public psychotherapy by reaffirming how pained you are. But these politicians, to quote a friend of mine would say, their version of leadership is when you're being run out of town, get in front of the crowd and make like a parade. when people are looking like a mob, you just get in front of the mob and put your finger up and see which way the mob is going and call yourself a leader. That's not leadership. So I think they don't know what the answer looks like, so they're just faking it. And I think that what gives me so much hope is the things that we've been talking about here in this 40 minutes we've been talking, Mary, are not rocket science. It's a radical movement of common sense. And I think that most of your listeners are sitting there and their heads are nodding to, 70% of what I'm saying. But it's not because I'm some brilliant guy. I'm not. All right? I'm just committed to role modeling, and I'm committed to common sense, and I'm committed to 1 + 2 = 3, 1 and 2 + 2 = 4, and it's a logic table, but it's tied into and wrapped around a spiritual recognition of our somebodiness, and it's also acknowledging, to quote my friend Jim Clifton, CEO of Gallup, that an innovation without a customer standing next to it is not a business. That what people want today in the world are jobs. If you want to solve the problem with Islamic extremism, it's solve poverty. You want to solve the social strife in the world, solve poverty. You want to solve the crisis in the world, solve poverty. How do you solve poverty? A job. A J-O-B. That's the crisis in the world. It ain't rocket science. But then you say, who knows how to create jobs? Well, there's your problem. And then we're looking at the jobs like love in all the wrong places, because people think the jobs come from big businesses and government. Governments are broke, and big businesses don't grow on people. They grow on efficiencies. You got 974 businesses in America that employ 10,000 people or more. Less than 1,000. But everybody's telling their kids to grow up, go to college, get a lot of student loan debt, and go work for a big company who's not hiring. Where all jobs come from startups, shoot-ups, entrepreneurs, and small business owners in year 3 through year 7. That's where all job growth comes from. And half of Americans are working for companies with 100 employees or less. So I think 1 million startups a year is where we should be focusing. 1 million.
Tell us about Business in a Box.
Business in a Box is where we're going to go into 2000. elementary, middle, and high schools. The tougher the school, the better. We're going to teach kids a course in dignity, values, a course in financial literacy, a course in entrepreneurship, a primer course, taught by outside role models because, for the reasons that I articulated earlier, and that as 5% of role models, every community stabilizes. That's the University of Illinois study that's cited in the book Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. 5% of role models, every community stabilizes. Then we're going to give every kid 25 businesses they can start for $500 or less. Let them pick a business and then pitch that business in their auditorium at a pitch event, think Shark Tank for kids, twice a year. When the kids win, boom. They get 2 minutes to pitch their idea. When they win, they win up to $500, get a business role model assigned to them, and they get a tablet that's awarded to them. They get to keep with internet connectivity, and they get a bank account because the only way you can get the money to start the business that we award you is by accessing a bank account. Now you're solving the 40 million unbanked and underbanked crisis that we have in this crisis. But you're not going to solve it by giving people a lecture about opening a bank account, no different than you're not going to solve a kid's diet by giving a lecture about fruits and vegetables. So we're going to speak to people's aspirations, and we're going to connect kids' aspirations to education and actually make them want to go to school again. A quick story: young guys in Atlanta were going through Hope in the Box in an urban school, and one of my guys was in a restroom stall, and they didn't know he was in there, and the guy kicked the door in and said, "Oh, this is BS. You know, we did that pitch event. You know, we should have won. You know, we were the best." And the other guy said with him, "Yeah, man, but the other team were more prepared. They had on bow ties. They had on matching bow ties and matching uniform." Another kid said, "Yeah, man, there was another team that seemed to be they prepared, like they rehearsed. We didn't rehearse." And then the first kid said, "Yeah, that's okay. We're gonna win next time." Now, Miriam, you can't win next time unless you stay in school. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Boom. There you go. That's like the kids who want to play football and will make sure they get a minimum grade point average in school so they can continue to play football because their aspiration is football. People will do what they want to reach their aspirations. That's my bet.
Now, you have this program, 5117. What is that?
Project 5117 is 5 million kids that make smart cool so that kids can stay in school or want to stay in school. That's going to be co-chaired or is co-chaired by Quincy Jones and Ambassador Andrew Young. Then you got 1 million kids, and that's about changing the culture, making smart cool again. And then you got 1 million kids who go through Hope Business in a Box academies. That's what we just described. Creating a generation of economic energy entrepreneurs and small business owners right out of high school, connecting the education to a job or economic opportunity. And then 1,000 Hope Inside locations. That's what I described earlier, the Starbucks of financial inclusion. Creating a national banking network for the poor and the working class, the private banker for the teetering class. And then 7 is 700 credit scores, which all this leads to, which changes school by school, neighborhood by neighborhood. Changes their whole ecosystem by changing their culture, by changing their reality.
This is an incredibly big vision. Tell us how people go about getting involved in it.
Well, first of all, thank you for this interview. It's been very rich. They can search on the internet for Project 5117. Research it, look at what makes sense for them. They don't have time, but they have a few dollars. They can invest in a kid's Hope Business in the Box Academy from $50 to $500. So they can invest in that kid that's a little lemonade stand around the corner from their house or in another city. If they got no money but they've got time, become a business role model in Hope Business in the Box Academy, or become a financial literacy teacher in a Banking on Our Future program. Or if you don't understand money, become a dignity teacher in the course in dignity, because everybody can share their own personal story. There's a place for everybody. If you're running a university or a retailer or a grocery store or a bank or a corporation, bring hope inside of your location. Hope inside, literally hope inside. If you have employee base that makes $50,000 a year less, bring us in to work with that employee base. There's something for everybody, but basically we're giving free software, Miriam, free software for folks who make commitments to go change their own community. We'll give you all the tools to do it. Or you can encourage us to come in your neighborhood, and if we do, we bring in one of the intellectual property rights, the software solutions that we described in this program, Hope Inside, Hope Business Box Academies, to help you create transformational change in your community.
And I assume that you have multiple websites. What is the main website that people should check this out on?
They can go to operationhope.org for Project 5117. They can go to johnhopebryant.com to get information on how to get a copy of How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, which is now a bestseller. They can, of course, always go to Apple's iBooks and Amazon.com and Barnes & Nobles and others to purchase a copy of the book. If you walk into an airport, go to Hudson Books. It's everywhere. You got you surrounded.
Let me ask you, was Hope always your middle name?
No. It's legal. It is my legal name. But about 10 years ago, we had the courts to legalize it because everybody was calling me John Hope Bryant, and business cards, and not business cards, but plane tickets were being issued in the name of John Hope Bryant. I couldn't get on a plane and go out of the country because my legal name and my nickname didn't match, so we just synced it up.
That's fantastic. So, John, what message would you like to tie up this interview with? What message to the American public?
It's just very simple. Our best years are not behind us. They are ahead of us. That you cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. That there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with us, except that we never got the memo of how free enterprise and capitalism works, and that poor neighborhoods are actually emerging markets, and that young lady works as a housekeeper in your house is not a liability. She is the best of America's assets, and she's driving the largest economy on the planet with her consumer spending. We need to be taking care of her daycare. We need to be giving her a massage on her shoulders. We need to be brushing her hair for her. We need to be giving her psychotherapy and counseling, whatever she needs to make her life better. We need to be supporting her because she's driving the largest economy on the planet. And we need to be much more humble about where solutions come from. We need to be about what we're for and not what we're against. And we need to understand that rainbows only follow storms. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. Finally, let's stop bashing immigrants. This nation was created by immigrants. Everybody but Native American Indians came here by boat, plane, train, but this place was not ours. We were all vagabonds. And once we get here, after a few generations, we start calling us Americans and everybody else those foreigners. Now, you need to find a legal path in and all that kind of stuff. Great. But understand that 40% of all the Fortune 500 companies are immigrant-founded. We are the greatest nation in the world because of our diversity, not in spite of it. Amen.
Amen. We've been speaking with John Hope Bryant about his book, How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, Rebuilding the Path to the Middle Class. His website is operationhope.org. John, thank you for your work, and thank you so much for being with us today.
My deep pleasure. Thank you so much.
Remember that all the books we discuss are listed on our website, ncreview.com, along with many hundreds of books, reviews, interviews, and videos that might provide just the right message at the right time for you. Come and visit. The browsing is fine. Next week, we have a double header with two very interesting guests, intuitive healer Patty Conklin and poet Frederick Glacier. And now we're going to close with our track of the week by Amy Steinberg, one of my favorites called Exactly.
what came next to produce me. Yes, look at me and you will see the breeze. The breeze it took to shake the leaves to make my mother's hair move. My father dared touch it and say, please, may I have a kiss? Yes, the breeze made me exist. And if you want to get even deeper into this right now, you will look at me and see a big old cloud. That's right, the cloud it took to form the storm, to make the breeze, to shake the leaves, to inspire the lip lock. Yes, a raindrop will pop up out these words. You heard me right. If you look at me close enough, you will see a dark, stormy night. And what is night? Well, night ain't night without a polar opposite of sunlight. So if you watch the way my hands sway, you'll see the light of day. And every day is a testament to the sediment of the earth's cores, ever spinning enormous force. So when you look at me just right, you'll see a spark of the source. But the most fascinating thing about this, and it's true, is that if you look at me just right, you see only what you perceive, how you believe, the space between you and me that creates reality. So when I sing, you can feel it. When I cry, you can heal it. When I speak words, you can be the words I speak by singing with me. Peace, love, free. 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 And when I try to fight or run, I only wind up back at square one. And when I think I know what's best for me, fate, she takes me back to exactly where I need to be. And when I am alone and full of fear, I just remember the rising sun always appears. And everyday miracles, miracles that I see. Will you take me back? You take me back, you take me back, you take me back to exactly where I need to. I am exactly where I need to be. I need to be.
Exactly, by the gutsy and soulful Amy Steinberg from her album Must Be the Moon. Amy sings of self-love, open-mindedness, and the holiness of everything. Look for her new album, Passion, the Awesome Allness of Healing Love. Amy is a member of the LuminaryVoices.com Speakers and Performers Bureau, and her website is amysteinberg.net. Well, that's our show for today. I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, I'm Miriam Knight for New Consciousness Review. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.